see what will happen. Hello everyone. Welcome to our monthly PhD program presentation series. And we have Peter Haastrup this week, and he's going to talk about acculturative stress and Nigerian international students in Canada. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. Just trying to get out of my...
We have around 35-40 minutes.
That's great. I was really scared I was going to be speaking for 2 hours. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Peter Haastrup, and I'll be presenting on acculturative stress and international students using Nigerian students as a case study. So, introduction. Immigrants represent a fast-growing population around the world, and many of them are facing psychological difficulties related to unfamiliar social norms, customs, and institutions encountered in a new cultural context. The number of international immigrants are increasing. As you can see, there are about 240 million immigrants worldwide, and 1 in every 35 person worldwide is living outside their country of birth. The immigrant population in Canada accounts for about 6.8 billion, or 20.6% of the population, which is pretty huge. It's important for us to conduct and analyze acculturation research in Canada to determine how immigrants are able to adapt to their new society and to explore factors that improve and or challenge acculturation of immigrants in their new society. In the Canadian context, the scarcity of research that examines the link between acculturative stress, social network, and mental health is really, it's lacking, and that underlies the importance of conducting research that examines this role in mental health status. In Canada, most acculturation research that was conducted have examined the acculturation process as a whole, social network, and mental health. It has only focused on Eastern European immigrants and also Asian immigrants. So that leaves out other aspects or other population. So key terms for this paper, I'll be looking at acculturative stress, or this presentation, acculturative stress, acculturation theory, temporary residence, which I'll be focusing on the international student category as a whole. So I'm just going to talk about the key terms. I'm going to focus on mostly the temporary residents and international students. I'll cover the acculturative stress and acculturation theory later on. So Canada's immigration program provides for the temporary entry of foreign workers and business people, foreign students, as well as visitors. These are the people that fall into the temporary residents, about 4 of them. These temporary residents contribute to Canada's economic development by fulfilling gaps in the labor market, enhancing trade, purchasing goods and services. So foreign nationals that are willing to or wishing to come to Canada as temporary residents, they must satisfy a particular visa requirement, and when they meet all that, they have interviews, and under the IRPA laws, they will leave Canada voluntarily after they finish whatever they've done. If it's coming to school, if it's coming to work, if it's for tourist visa, they must leave immediately their visa expires. For the purpose of this research, this paper will focus on just the international students category, as I said, which are they are in Canada primarily to study, although they may have other permits, say work permit or any other kind of permits they get while they come in. And now we'll cover the acculturation stress piece and the acculturation theory. The next slide. So, well, for us to understand the conceptual, for us to understand acculturative stress, we need to understand the concept of acculturation on its own. So, history of acculturation, according to Powell, 1880, that was a long time. The term acculturation came to light to demonstrate the semantics of indigenous Aboriginal American language. And following this, in a memorandum from the American Society of Anthropologists, they requested an article of documentation of literature on acculturation stress. And they defined acculturation as a phenomenon which results when a group of individuals having different cultures come into a continuous first-hand contact with a culture that is not theirs. So basically, it's when someone leaves their home country and moves to a different country that is way different from where they are coming from. Well, I'll give my, like, for me, for an example, when I came from, when I moved down from Africa down to Canada, there were so many culture differences. The weather, one left a really warm country, coming in January in the midst of really cold, freezing weather, and all that hit me, and I was wondering what has happened. Is the world coming to an end, and things like that. So those are the kind of acculturation process that happens. Berry also defined, Berry 1980 defined acculturation as a process by which individual grabs and absorbs behavior, values, beliefs, and norms of the host culture into their natural perspective. So it's not only the aspect of culture shock, it's also the aspect of grasping different new culture. This could be seen as, or it could also be known as, what's the word for it? Integration. So you're integrating into the system. You're beginning to make a new culture for yourself. Nwadura and McDo further explain this as a cultural change which results from the continued first-hand contact between two distinct cultures. So these two cultures come together and they produce something unique, something different in its own self. Berry's psychological process of acculturation are changes that occurs both in the behavior of the individual and the culture of the group, and this allows for individuals to experience acculturation both individually and as a group. And this, no one person experiences acculturation the same. So everyone has a different way of experiencing their acculturation. A two-dimensional model of acculturation that changes, a two-dimensional model of acculturation that addresses the issue of cultural maintenance and the question of intergroup relation through contact and participation. When we talk about cultural maintenance, it's referred to the degree or extent to which cultural identity and characteristics were to be important and maintenance strive for. So it's a way where we consider the cultural identity of the people coming in, as well as keeping that maintenance going and focused on not taking away what the people what the immigrants have come with. So we need to maintain that cultural balance. And then there's the contact and participation, which imply the degree or extent to which people should become involved in other cultural groups or remain primarily among themselves. So right now in Canada, we've seen some people might choose to stay within their clique, within their around people that are similar to them. We have Little Italy, we have Chinatown, we have all those places where they've chosen to form a community of their own. But also there are other people from that same culture that have also chosen to embed themselves into different aspects of society. So they probably might not be staying in Chinatown, they might be staying somewhere else and living their day-to-day life as though they are Canadians. Assimilation occurs when, so with that we're going to look at the 4 modes of acculturation. And I'll start with assimilation, which occurs when the migrant group fully adopts the cultural values of the dominant group. So this is when someone moves from their home country to Canada and they adopt everything related to Canadian culture. So you can't even tell if they're from a different country entirely. Then we have the marginalization, which comes, and a good example for assimilation, the United States really, like, this is something the United States portray in their immigration in their immigration system. Marginalization comes about as a result of confused identity within migrant group, where there's little or no contact between the migrant and the mainstream group. This causes a conflict because they don't know where they fit in. They don't know if they are still an immigrant, if they are Canadians. They don't know how to balance both cultures. Separation or segregation takes place when there's little contact with the larger society while maintaining their culture. So this is an example of the Chinatown, the Little Italy, and all those all those cultures that have chosen to have their communities built within the larger framework. So everything they want could be found within this community. They probably don't need to go outside of their community to get what they need. Like I know in Chinatown, the Scotia Bank there, most of the bankers and tellers are all Chinese. They speak Chinese. It's almost as though they are living in China right there. So that's the separation or segregation. And then finally we have the integration, which implies the maintenance of cultural cohesiveness of the group, as well as a gradual transition of the group to become a part of the dominant society. So in all, integration is you fit in, you're doing your own, in the society, you could communicate, you could you learn the culture, you learn the language, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you still have your cultural balance. You still eat your cultural food, you still have all your cultural practices and all that. So that moves us to acculturative stress. Berry. So berry, you keep hearing me saying berry. Berry is really big on the acculturation and acculturative stress model, and formulated it and has brought it into the academic world. So he introduced the term acculturative stress to replace an earlier concept of culture shock, or anxiety that results from and has its sources in different difficulties experienced in the process of living and learning. So basically, acculturative stress happens when you move from your country to a new country, and then you start having anxiety of living, of surviving, of when you're in the new environment of learning. It is the psychological stress that occurs due to the cultural differences found between a host culture and an incoming culture, marked by reduction in the physical and mental state of individual groups undergoing acculturation. The more intense and profound the differences between the host culture and the newcomers, the more extreme and forceful are the acculturative stress. So now, using the same example of from Africa to Canada, warm weather, cold weather coming in both extreme temperatures. Also, there's the issue of accent. You come and people keep on asking you, sorry, I can't understand you. What do you say? Repeat yourself over and over again. Or there's the aspect of you come and your education is not valid. Your education you brought from back home is not valid. They ask you to start all over again. And so all this tells in the mental process of an individual. And so anxiety kicks in, depression kicks in, and a way for them to balance all the stresses, and this is what leads to acculturative stress. Berry and Kim in 1988 provided a list of challenges arising from acculturative stress, and it's like examples are physical, such as climate changes and search for a place to live. There's the biological, which is such as new foods and illnesses. There's the cultural, including changes in political, economic, and religious context. And also there's the psychological, which is changes in values and attitudes, and psychological and mental issues. And finally, there's the social, such as loss of lives, loss of family, friends, and language. So all of this plays an important part. One of the first big changes I saw when I moved to Canada, I joined the soccer team, and this family comes to pick me up for games. And every time I said good morning, when they come to pick me up, I said good morning to the parents, and they ask me, they follow up with the question, what's good about the morning? And I wonder, why do they ask me this? But I've been brought up to always say good morning to my elders when I see them. That was one, and I was still trying to process that when maybe 2 weeks in, when I came, we were leaving for a trip, and the dad said something, and the son yelled at the dad and said, shut up, Dad, I can't believe what you're saying right now. And in my head, I was really, like, I was shaking. I was like, okay, so now we don't have to go for this game. Why would the boy do this? Because I was thinking from my own cultural perspective. If I'm to tell my dad, shut up, I don't even know I can't even imagine what will happen. But I know for sure I'm not going to play that soccer game that very day. I'm going back home. And while I was still trying to process it, the mom said something, and the boy yelled and swore at the mom, and I was like, okay, this is game over. And the next thing that came out from the parents' mouth was the biggest shock of my life. They're like, Joe, we're really sorry, we don't mean to offend you, just keep it calm. And right, so that's really that really was a shock to me in its own self. And those are the kind of changes too you need to learn when you come into the country, that different people, and they react differently, or they act different in different ways. Baldawi in 2003 in the related categorization summarized 5 types of acculturative stress, and those he described them as feelings of distress, homesickness, depressive reactions, going along with alienation and hopelessness, psychosomatic complaints, vulnerability to diseases, and psychosocial maladjustment and psychopathic behavior. So those are basic things. Homesickness is something really big too. I knew when I came as well, I was calling home almost every other day, trying to talk to my friends, trying to talk to my families that were still back home, until I found out that this is really, really expensive to continue doing every day. So that's how I was trying to get over the homesickness, and as well I was looking for places to eat African food. So that being said, that's so why international students? So international students is becoming a big, major immigration priority in Canada, and it's not just for universities. It's for all levels of government and educational institution. In the last 10 years or thereabout, they've contributed approximately about 6.5 billion US dollars, or 6.5 Canadian dollars, 6.4 billion US dollars to the Canadian economy. So this is a really big amount of money for a particular group of people to be contributing to the economy of Canada. Not only that, the federal government, Haastrup, has come out to say we should focus on bringing in more international students. We should increase, and with the numbers we could tell. I'm going to show you that in when I get to Nigerian. We'll see how it has skyrocketed from 2014 to 2013. The interest is not only driven by economic gains, but also by skills, innovation, and diversification. When Canada is pretty much known for its multicultural aspects to it, and when you bring in international students, they come with different skills, they come with different innovation, things that are new, things that are unique to their own self, and they use it to enhance the Canadian economy as a whole, and diversification too plays in there. Thank you. There's a shift in thinking from temporary residents to a pool of highly qualified permanent residents. So apart from them being temporary residents right now, international students are seen basically as a great way to bring in permanent residents, that they don't have to say your education is not valid. You need to go back and take these courses, or how you, right? They'll have the education, the Canadian education. They'll have the Canadian experience, and all that plays a role and puts them way on top than the temporary foreign workers that come into the country without a Canadian education. So basically, assumptions of avoiding employment barriers encountered by skilled immigrants. So things that skilled immigrants experience right now, like the Canadian experience, international students would not experience that. So that's a really big, like a big benefit for something that's really important in the immigration policy shift. So incentives to remain in Canada. So one of the major things now that we're seeing is Canada is beginning to have different incentives that's making international students want to come to Canada, as well as also remain in Canada. As it's shown there, more international students are choosing to remain in Canada post-work, postgraduate work opportunities. They have different. So when you graduate, you have the option of getting a 1, 2, 3 years visa to work. A country like the UK, Britain, they don't give work permits when you're done. Most times, as soon as you're done school, they want you to leave the country. Same with the US as well. It's hard for people to get this postgraduate work opportunities, but in Canada, it's fairly easy. It's part of the process of them maintaining their international student. So many of them plan to pursue permanent residence through the Canadian Experience class and the provincial nominee program. In January, Canadian government also introduced the Canadian Express entry, which I believe is a combination of the Canadian Experience class, the skilled immigrants. I can't remember what it's called. Temporary work program and something skilled immigrants program. So the combination of all three form the Canadian Express entry. Now, is that beneficial to international students? We are yet to determine that, because it puts the pool it casts a broader net, because they will be competing with those in those outside the country as well as international students here. And most of those international students in Canada might not have a vast or a big portfolio in terms of work experience as those who will be outside the country who have said work in a field for 10, 15, 20 years. The decision study metrics is changing from which educational program do I want to pursue, which post-secondary education institution offer the best program for me, where will I get in, to which program in which institution in which province will be the best chance of getting quick permanent residence in Canada. Mostly now, most of my international friends are moving to either Manitoba or to Alberta. Why? Because those are the provinces that will provide them with fast permanent residence or through the provincial nominee program. So it's not about the program you're in anymore. It's not about the quality of the education anymore. I just want to get into somewhere that will get me permanent resident. Now this it's not. I don't believe this is beneficial to the Canadian economy as a whole, or even to the individual. So why Nigerian international students? There's a great scarcity of acculturation stress research on immigrants of African descent, including international students. How am I doing for time? Okay. Including international students, and these differences in migration patterns, it's caused by differences in migration patterns, culture, language, and religion. And changing trend. So changing trend now have seen more African countries coming into Canada as international students, and one of those is Nigerian immigrants. In the top 10, we have Nigeria. Top 10 African countries coming in. We have Nigeria, we have South Africa, Egypt, Libya, Kenya, Morocco, and so